Let's dig in, guys. So today, our guest is Dave Hall. He is a CPA, and we're going to talk taxes, taxes, and more taxes. So every investor's favorite thing is taxes, or to not deal with taxes. So, but no, definitely it's something we need to know about. So I'm going to hand it over to Dave. Let him, tell about himself. How he got started, and of course, just his story, and then let's dig on in.
Okay, thank you, Christopher. Misty, very nice to be with you today. I will tell you, I hopefully didn't scare all your listeners off by talking about a CPA and taxes. So
No.
those are two things. Add the IRS in there, and all of a sudden you're going to have all your listeners going somewhere else. But hopefully we can make it exciting today. I've been a CPA for 27 years now. I originally started in Las Vegas, Nevada. Had some amazing experiences in my early years because of Las Vegas being so diverse. Now I spend most of my time educating CPAs on retirement and talking about different retirement strategies to help them save taxes, to help them invest their money appropriately so they can get through the longest self-imposed period of unemployment most of us will have in our lifetime. Could be 20 years, 30, maybe even 40. It's what we call retirement. But happy to be here, happy to be able to share my knowledge to help your listeners better understand what they can start doing with their real estate investments.
Man, excellent. I got a question because you said Las Vegas and taxes in the same sentence. And my head went to, I have to ask, you had any crazy tax stories or any kind of like clients that were a little, like, uh, I just hear Las Vegas and taxes, and I think like, I don't know where your head goes, Misty, but it's
Yeah, being in Vegas was exposed to everything, as you can imagine, and very different for a small town Southern Utah guy, very religious, gets into Las Vegas, and all of a sudden you're getting clients from all aspects of Vegas, from the clubs to people that are professionals to large public companies that are coming in. And I learned very quickly that my job's to count numbers. My job's not to figure out what people are doing at their business and their lives. It was really to just count numbers. And we did have some great experiences. I had the opportunity while I was there of being the accountant for Floyd Mayweather for a number of years.
Oh, wow.
And just unbelievable experiences when I was working with him. I mean, stories that I can share, stories I can't share, but was a great experience to be able to see him in the prime of his life and be able to work with his team as he progressed his career in his boxing, what he was doing there.
Money
That's awesome.
Mayweather. That's awesome. So it's you mentioned said not to get in their lives. I have to tell this. I remember as I think I was a teenager. Yeah, I was going to college. I didn't go all the way through, but the criminal justice teacher told us when you do your taxes, if you're dealing drugs, that you should end up putting you're a salesperson. I don't know about that firsthand, but I just remember
That's how it's classified.
that he specifically said, and he kind of looked at everybody. He's like, for those of you guys, it's a salesperson. And I was like, kind of like, all right, but no, man, I got asked. So Money Mayweather, what was that like? Just experience.
Absolutely great experience. I had a great time doing his work. Problem is as the manager goes, so does the CPA. So when he changed managers, we ended up getting kicked to the curb. But we had some great times. One of my favorite experiences I ever had with him is we got to get in there when he was doing his training, preparing for one of his fights. We were doing a lot of accounting for various boxers at the time. We'd hooked up with a guy named James Prince, who is the brother of Scarface out of Houston, Texas. He was his manager. We're in there, and it was the funniest thing to watch. I mean, he's so talented, and obviously they had to bring these guys in to spar with him, and they'd pay him like $500 to come in and spar with him, and he would just sit there and ridicule them. It wasn't just about boxing. He would talk about their mothers, anything he could do to just get them frustrated and angry with them. And that's what they do. I mean, by the time they're done, they're ready to kill him just because of everything he said to him over the last 10 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever length of time they're there. But obviously they can't do anything about it because he's so quick and so fast that, the more angry they get, the harder they throw their punches, the more he sees it coming and he gets out of the way. And so he'd get to this point, they'd be just frustrated as can be. All of a sudden he'd just step back, two big bodyguards would come, grab them under their arms, throw them out the door, give them their $500 and send them on the way.
That's enough, buddy. Here's your 500. Get out.
Yeah, you earned your money. You're going to be angry the rest of the day, but don't show back up here anytime before the next time we call you.
Yeah. I think, and I know this isn't all real estate, but it's experience. It's life experience, right? This was stuff you've been through, and especially with your profession. And when I think of Mayweather, I always think of all the stuff he's done on social media, and is he really like that? What you like, kind of what you see on social media? Is he like that? I gotta ask, like, is he
Yeah, yeah,
similar?
absolutely. Again, very interesting when we're in during those initial years. Leonard Ellerby is his personal manager, and they would come into our office. You always knew when they were there. There'd be 4 or 5 very expensive sports cars out front of our building, and 20 people coming in and sitting down and going through the various items that we needed to. But always very flashy, very very out there. But something that many people, it's public knowledge, not sharing anything that's not out there, but something many people don't realize is he suffered a lot through his life with depression. It's something
Yeah.
that he's struggled with mentally. And with that, we saw some of the progress and growth that he went through, some of the struggles that he was facing, and just have a lot of respect for someone that goes out there and pushes it every day and tries to be a better person.
Yeah, I got. Did he have the $20,000 in sides at the restaurant, Wolf of Wall Street? Are they cure cancer?
Yeah, there's
Yeah.
definitely some stories, experience you had. I wish I could share,
Yeah.
but won't be able to. I guess if he passes away before I do, maybe
Yeah.
I can write a memoir. But if not, which the chances are, I'll probably be gone way before he is.
So
But definitely a great experience.
how'd you end up with that? I know you said the manager. So how did you guys?
Yes. So I was doing a lot of work with Bank of America and James Prince, who became his manager. Again, he's a rap mogul. Scarface was a band that he had represented because of his brother being in that band early on. He had gotten into the boxer management, and one of my friends over at Bank of America connected us, and he said, "Look, we need somebody good in Vegas that knows what they're doing. We've got Floyd, who was just getting started. Diego Corrales, who unfortunately passed away from a motorcycle accident. A couple of other boxers. He said, "Look, we just need good people to take care of them."
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We were back at the time. I mean, we were the CPA firm of CPA firms in Vegas. It was a different world, and we were doing a ton of real estate there. With they had Colliers International, a company called Stewart and Mixer had been purchased by them, and a lot of the young guys had taken that over, and we got heavily into that. Again, just represented a lot of big people in that area.
Man, that's crazy. That's awesome. I mean, that is a heck of a resume, to be, working with all those guys. So you originally just had started out Bank of America, and then you obviously then were kind of moved your way in, and then next thing you know, you're one boxer after another, after another, after another. Man, that's just,
Yeah, and I'll tell you another funny story. Maybe I shouldn't share, but it was very interesting. We were doing everything for Floyd at that time,
mhm.
and many people. Again, this is all public record, so it's not something you couldn't find already on the internet. But he was having issues with his dad at the time that we were representing him, and one of our staff actually had to go kick his dad out of the house.
Oh,
And we all laughed inside the office. He was the guy who had to go knock on the door. It's like, "Hey, Mr. Mayweather, been sent by your son. I've got this notice here saying you're getting evicted."
that's
Sorry,
crazy.
sorry for you, but we all laughed because obviously someone had to do it. We had to pick in our office who was going to do that, and had a young kid that just loved, being around Floyd, loved going to his boxing matches and stuff, and said, "Hey, I'll take it." So we're like, "Go ahead, please, knock yourself out."
I'm not gonna lie, Dave. I would have been the guy to be like, "Don't draw straws. I'll take it." Just keep showing up. Mr. Mayweather,
Yeah,
you're gonna have to leave.
JD was that guy in our office, Christopher. He was the one saying, "Hey, whatever I can do with him, I'm happy to do. Good, bad. Otherwise, I'm there."
Man, that would have been me. I'd be like, "All right," and then after that, like, hang out with Mayweather, Floyd, and be like, "All right, man, let's kick it, dude. Your dad's gone. We're fine." So I don't know if you've ever watched. Have you ever watched the show Ballers, HBO? No.
No, I haven't.
I
Yeah.
I asked that The Rock is on there, and then they go through. Misty's watched. I like the show a lot, and and they kind of go through like the different lifestyles of some of these sports figures, and he's a money manager is what he is. Is it really that crazy? I just got to ask. Is it, do you have like, is it like a one day you wake up and you're like, "Oh man, we got this situation today," and the next day it's this? I mean, is it a wild
Yeah, it's
ride?
truly that way. I mean, you really don't realize just what a job it is to get in their lives. Again, from legal issues that may be popping up across there to relationship issues that someone may have in that situation to money issues of, overspending and rewarding themselves for things that, you and I may say, hey, I don't understand. It's something I wouldn't do.
Yeah.
But in their minds, they justify it based upon the amount of work they had to put in to get where they were. So,
yeah, man. So I got to ask before we jump to the next stuff and kind of, your journey into what you're doing now, any crazy stories, man, that you're just like, that just stick out that you can tell, not anything, that you're like, I can tell that just like, man, that was a wild day in the office.
yeah, I mean, we had a lot of those, always challenges. One of the weirdest relationships we ever had. And again, you represent everybody when you're living in Las Vegas and during that period of time. And I guess one of the strangest ones for me was I used to represent Joe DiMaggio's aunt. So the great baseball player, Joe DiMaggio, she was a client of mine and she was used to taking her family out, gambling and spending money. That's what they did. She was very wealthy and her grandkids or nieces or nephews had come into town. They're old enough, they'd go out, they'd have a nice dinner and go out on the strip. Well, she got to a point, she says, hey, we want to go out. We had no idea. My wife and I just thought we were going to go to dinner. It was going to be over. We'd take her back home and that would be it. We end up going to this nice dinner and she says, hey, we're going gambling. Now, I'm not a gambling guy. You got to understand, I never put money in slot machines. Living in Vegas, I realized a long time ago, it's not me, but I'm thinking, okay, she, I guess, is willing to spend some money here. If she's offering, we're not going to turn her down. $10,000 later,
Wow.
in about an hour, we're broke. She's trying to get more money off of a credit card to let us keep going. And you can imagine here, this was early years of my accounting. I was probably making $2,500 a month, maybe back then. I'm like, that's 4 months of income. We just blew in an hour. But yet I think what she was hoping is what we would win. And then she was going to send us home with all the winnings. Again, we were paying high dollar slot machines. It wasn't the nickel slots. But again, just weird stuff. It's like, okay, who gets to go out with Joe DiMaggio's aunt to be able to hang out with her, tell all the stories, and she drops 10 grand on you and your wife gambling, hoping to send you home with some money that never happens.
Man, that's crazy. Hey, you know what? I'm not a big gambler. I like poker, if anything, just because I have more control. But Misty's always told me, because she likes to gamble, we've had our things like, don't, what is it? You always tell me it's just something it's a way to spend your time.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's entertainment.
Yeah, the aunt's giving entertainment at that point. She's like, here's 10 grand, entertain yourselves. And hopefully you win something.
The cool thing for me is I'm very curious, but I'm not a person that does it. So one of my clients was one of the top sports bettors in the country, makes millions and millions of dollars. I can tell you a lot of what they do, from moving lines and how they do it. But again, I'm never going to do it. I'm not going to bet on baseball, do what they do. But they explained it. I learned how to count cards for 21. I learned how to play poker from some of the top guys who were beating all the casinos. But again, that's not me. I'm a very religious guy. I stay at the casinos, keep a very simple life. But accounting exposed me to a whole lot of the world that, again, most people love to get that knowledge and use. And I'm like, thanks. That was a great experience. But you're never going to see me down counting cards playing 21 at the poker tables.
Well, give me a second, Dave. I'm going to book 3 American Airline tickets real quick. my phone. Where's my phone, Misty? You're my phone, Misty. That's awesome, man. So I got to, so man, it sounds like your career, started off with a bang, some wild stuff, different, and not like crazy wild, but like, most people become a CPA and they're, it's not, especially like here in Texas, it's not, it's not going to, it's a quiet life, right? But you started out different. What made you shift? At what point did you go, I'm going to shift into doing this, and just change?
Yeah, a lot of it came with my own age. It got to a point that you realized a lot of your clients were getting to an age that things were changing. They were needing to look into the next phase of their life. Most of my clients were older than I was. Again, at early ages, 25, 26, 27, we were handling some of the top accounts in Las Vegas. We were dealing with millions and millions of dollars. We always joked that we couldn't put our pictures on anything because no one would go with us because we're so young. We had to get them in our office and say, hey, yeah, we're the young guys handling all your money.
That's great.
But as a result, them being 10, 15 years older than me, it got to a point that they're saying, look, we're going into retirement. We need some help. And I realized it was a great opportunity for me to transition into more of a consulting role. Not that we weren't doing that as a firm, but it's more of a consulting education role and saying, hey, I really want to just help people get into a phase they're really struggling with. Because again, there's a lot of people out there that can help you with their taxes and a lot of people that are decent at doing that.
Mhm.
but you don't have a lot of them that are really good at helping you get through those retirement years and letting you realize that, hey, we got some issues. Most of America, over 50% of us, going to run out of money before we die. We got to start doing some things different so that doesn't happen to us. So we're not part of that 50%.
Yeah. So you saw it coming with your clients. You got guys that are at the top of their game, and they're like, it's time. Because obviously, in athletes, they have shelf lives, right? They can't just you can't do it forever. Your elbows are gonna start hurting, your knees are gonna start clicking, and and so you saw that, and you said, hey, I can help on that side, and that makes sense. That I think to me that brings a lot of things full circle to say, it's you recognize them because at that point guys like that, athletes. I mean, you hear stories of it, and I mean, you could tell us, the lowdown on it. I mean, there's stories that they just can't take care of their money, and not because they're not good people. It's just they're athletes. That's their job, and so you see that coming. Did you see that a lot?
Yeah, and some of that can be a big challenge. In fact, we had a situation with one of the large energy drink companies. We represented them, and we were able to save them $25 million. It was like, they send us a little thank you card saying, "Okay, thank you very much. Glad you helped." Well, if I saved you, 100 grand, I'm your best friend. I'm your hero. It's
Yeah.
like, hey, Dave helped me put a lot of money, and for them, it was just nothing. And that became a challenge too. Again, when you're talking with that kind of money, with large public companies, talking about athletes, those type of people, again, money just becomes a normal transaction, and as a result, I didn't get the fulfillment I needed. Again, I wanted to be some, not that I need to be loved and cared about, but I wanted to feel like I was adding value to their lives and helping them become put themselves into a better position. And you just couldn't do it with some of these companies.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So for you, and the mission is that, and as now retirement. And so, how did you end up transitioning into CPAs? Like, what made you kind of go that route versus different individuals that aren't CPAs? How'd you
Yeah,
end
it's
up there?
interesting how it all played out, and it really became timing. It was all about timing. So I moved to Puerto Rico. I lived there for 5 years too. So what I do, I can do anywhere. I built my firm that way. Pre-COVID, I was always at a position that I could live anywhere in the country I want to, as long as I get internet and I could get access to an airport. So I moved to Puerto Rico for 5 years, and during that period of time, I started educating CPAs on Puerto Rico tax incentives. There's a lot of benefits of living there on the island. So I started doing that. And then during that period of time, I'd been in the retirement space off and on throughout my career. And I'd connected with a client that had moved to Puerto Rico that was doing education in that space. Said, hey, I think I can take your information and get into the CPA market that you've not been able to do as a financial planner. Are you willing to let me give it a shot? So he said yes. I took his information. And then we happened to be on a platform that allowed us to educate at a much cheaper price than most people were paying to educate. So I threw it out there, and the audience loved it. And so then it went from that class to the next class to, now I teach about 140 different events a year on various retirement topics. So it was just something, the right time, being with the company at the right time that did the marketing for us. They were in a growth spurt and needed good content, and we just happened to have the good content and the relationship. So really weird how it all happened. It was something I'd had an interest in for decades, but it just came together during COVID because of the timing of everyone switching from live events to webinars, and our ability to connect with the right companies who were growing in that industry, and then having the right content to be able to help people apply it in their lives as they got in their retirement years.
COVID did so many great things at at different levels.
Yeah.
It did so much. So I got to ask this because Misty and I talk about the island life. The island life? Is the island life all it was cracked up to be? Like, is it, or do you get bored? Like, all right, I've been here for 5 years. It's time to come back.
Yeah, I'll tell you. So my answer always was to people that the hardest decision I had to make every day is: do I go swim in the pool or at the beach? What am I going to do? Which one do I pick? Which obviously sounds great. It wasn't that way. I've got five. I've got 8 children. I had 5 children that were living on the island with us at the time. It's like any other place. When you've got that many kids, you're going to sporting events. You've got school activities. You've got all these things you got to do. You quickly find that you're not spending near as much time at the beach and the pool as you would like to. Now, we did a lot of that, and it was great. But one of the challenges of Puerto Rico is the government's just so dysfunctional. Everything takes forever. I mean, it took us 2 days to get our driver's license. Even when I left the island, it took me almost 2 months to get my car shipped off the island to get back here to the United States. I couldn't sell my house when I left. Part of it was because of COVID. They had things locked down, wouldn't even let somebody come and show my house by themselves. So again, just dysfunction that's very hard to put up with. We got through Hurricane Maria. We got through earthquakes. You may remember they had the earthquakes, and then they had the pandemic. And my wife's like, it's 5 years. We've done all. We're going. I'm done. It's like it's been great, but take me back to the mainland. Let me live on the States.
That's after that. I asked that question because I mean, obviously, part of real estate, retirement, all that. Misty and I always have that conversation of like, let's move to Hawaii one day, and it's it's nice to talk to somebody that's done that.
Yeah.
You've moved off into an island, and the way you put that in perspective, like, well, really, it was like normal day-to-day stuff. We just had to do it a little bit more. It wasn't the vacation that you think, is what it sounds like.
Yeah, and I compare it a lot to if you know people that have indoor pools, you find they never use them because it's there all the time. It's just one of those weird things. But a guy's got a summer pool. They're out in the pool all summer. They're out there for 3 months enjoying the pool, taking advantage of it.
Yeah.
I see that a lot with island life. It's just going to be your 24/7, 365 days a year. Going to get to a point for many people, they're just not taking advantage of that. But if you've got a second home and you're over there and maybe Airbnb that property for most of the rest of the year, and then all of a sudden you're popping in there during the summer months or to go on vacation, all of a sudden it becomes this exciting, interactive, enjoy the benefits of the island life that you just don't get if it's 365. Again, it just becomes a normal life for most people.
That makes sense. So yeah, Miami, Misty, Hawaii. That's cool, man. That's it. We talk about it all the time. I'm always looking up, different stuff like, oh, I want to Airbnb this. We could rent this out. We could go buy that. We haven't done it yet, but it's always a discussion. So
Tempting.
I mean, it's tempting, very tempting. So, but man, let's kind of jump into some real estate tax tips. And what would you say some of the most common mistakes that you see with real estate investors, or just with taxes in regards to that?
Yeah, I was going to say the biggest mistake that I've seen, and understand too, I've represented some of the largest promoters of real estate investing in the country as well.
Mm-hmm.
People that have TV shows, these guys that are doing the flipping shows on television, some of them are still clients of mine that I represent and work with. So I've been exposed to a lot of the industry. And I will tell you, the biggest mistake that I see people make is they don't do their homework. They don't understand that. Again, they go to a seminar and they get promoted that everything's going to be wonderful and they can become the next big real estate guru. Well, a weekend seminar isn't enough to teach you everything you need to know to be able to be successful at that. And you guys know that, having gone through the process you guys have gone through, there's an education process. So again, not a bad thing to get involved in, but you need to understand what it is you're getting involved in, that it's not just a hyped up, hey, yeah, these two guys are making a ton of money and I can too. That's a really tough way to get into the industry versus being able to do your own homework, being able to understand the laws regarding the way it works, finding right neighborhoods that you're going to invest in and areas that you can maintain if you're going to try to do it yourself and get that knowledge. So it's really just a lack of understanding before they pull the trigger that seems to be the biggest issue I've seen.
Yeah. Well, I got a question on, and I think this will help just the audience, because some people may listen to this and they're like, I don't really know where to start with taxes, and others may listen to it and go, oh yeah, I know that one. But the difference in fix and flips, where one's obviously short term, you fix it, you flip it, get your money taxed differently than if you get if you do a long term rental. Can you kind of go through that and explain the biggest differences between those and how and what someone can expect? Because people get that fix and flip mindset and they're like, yeah, and then they don't realize there's taxes involved immediately or somewhere in there.
And I appreciate you bringing that up, because you're exactly right, Christopher. When we look at it, when you're looking at a flipping properties, you risk, if you do enough of them, usually if you're doing 2 to 3, and again, the IRS, like many things, doesn't give us a fixed number. But if you get to a point that they see it as being a business, then the income's treated as a business. It's an active business that you're doing. You're going to pay ordinary income tax on any profits you make. You may be subject to Social Security and Medicare tax on any profits you make if you're running it through a Schedule C versus a S corporation or some other type of entity that would allow you to avoid that Social Security and Medicare tax. Whereas a investment of rental property is a passive investment. you're going to have the opportunity to get that income as passive income. Now, if you have some passive losses, may have some restrictions on being able to take all those losses immediately, but you never lose them. They're always there. And some point, if you sell the property or you have gains, you'll be able to offset those. But huge difference. So I appreciate you asking, because yeah, flips can become very expensive from a tax side if it's something you're doing regularly, and the IRS says, hey, it's a trade or business now.
Yeah. So if you're doing, at what level do they consider it not a business? They just
Usually, if you're doing more than two or more a year, that's when you've got to start really looking at it. If someone's just flipping, and we have a lot of clients that will go out and with the $500,000 marital exemption for a property on
mm,
primary real estate, if you've lived in it 2 out of 5 years, they'll flip their personal residence. They'll get into a fixer upper and they'll go in and they'll fix everything up over a few years and then flip it and be able to just use the personal exemption. And if there's anything else, treated as capital gain. But again, it's really, what are you doing with your time? Is all my time spent just fixing up and repairing and flipping properties? Or do I have other businesses that I'm out doing and involved in that are helping me make money as well?
yeah. One thing I see, and I think Misty, you probably see this too, and I actually saw this recently. I see it a lot in Facebook groups where just different real estate Facebook groups, people will pop in. They ask a question, and then everybody comments, right? Everybody puts like a big comment. Oh, you're gonna pay capital gains tax. Oh, you're gonna pay this. It's income, and so if can you kind of run through that a little bit, the difference in far as like what someone can expect? Because for instance, like there's thresholds, right? There's certain thresholds.
Right.
If you make under a certain amount of money, you don't pay zero. You pay zero capital
Right.
gains tax. Versus if you make X amount of dollars, you're going to pay X amount. Can you kind of run through the short-term capital gains tax and the long-term and kind of what to
Yeah, so
expect?
I'm not going to be able to provide the actual bracket pieces, but
Right, right.
hopefully I can at least give you enough information that you can understand. So you bring up short term versus long term, and you need to understand, if you hold a piece of real estate less than 12 months and you sell that property, regardless if it's a flip or a buy and hold, it was something you intended to buy and hold, but you ended up selling it early because you got a good offer and you wanted to get rid of the property. If it's within that first 12 months, you're paying ordinary income tax rates regardless. So
Mm,
whatever your rates are, add that in with your W-2 and any interest income or whatever else you may have, that's going to get taxed at those rates, both federal and state level. But if you hold it for 12 months and 1 day, if you've held it for over a year, now all of a sudden you're subject to long-term capital gain rates, which, as you mentioned, you've got a period. And again, I think for a married couple, it's up to about $80,000 now. I think I've got a sheet here actually
yeah.
I could pull out, but it may be zero. You may have zero tax. In fact, we talk to a lot of people that if they've got capital gains, not only in real estate, but in the market or other things, if you're in a zero tax bracket, hey, take the gains as you can if you have an opportunity to do so, to not pay any more than that.
Yeah.
But then it goes up, it maxes. Most people end up paying about 15% when we look at most people's income level, what they would pay. And then once you get over, for a married couple, I believe $540,000, somewhere in there, you're going to start paying at 20%. And then if you get to a certain level, you may have to pay the excess Medicare tax at 3.8. So, but still way better than the 37% ordinary top tax bracket, and still being subject to the net investment tax 3.8 that you might pay on that other income anyway.
Yeah. And that's what there's a kind of another reason I kind of bring that up, because it's also a strategy, right? I mean, if you're a long-term investor, you've reduced your taxes to where you're paying no taxes, right? But then maybe you say, well, I've had this property for a couple of years and I decide to sell it. And if you're in that 0% tax bracket, you can walk away with all of it and not have
Yeah.
to, aside from paying back your depreciation or whatnot. I would assume you walk away with all of it, and then you can go reinvest that wherever else. Versus that
Right.
short term, is that right? That short term, that's something that I think some people don't see or realize. And I know when I had heard that, I was like, long ago, I was like, the light bulb went off. I'm like, oh my god, I could just be in the zero tax bracket and then sell whatever long term real estate we have, and we don't have to pay that capital gains tax.
Yeah, exactly. Depending on where it sets, definitely could be a way. And again, the marital exemption is a great one too.
Mm-hmm.
Again, for people, if you're willing to move, if you're in a position where you don't have young kids and you're, and usually it's the wife, not picking on you, Misty, but usually it's the wife that gets connected to the house in the neighborhood saying, hey, I really don't want to keep moving every 2 years. But again, imagine every 2 years being able to move, have $500,000 of income completely exempt from income tax at all, if you've got that type of gain. So again, I've had clients over the years that have done that.
Mm-hmm.
They've said, look, I'm going to go buy a $500,000 house that needs a bunch of fix up and repair. I'm going to put another $500,000 into it, and then I'm going to flip it for $1.5 million. And I'll take, in 2 years, I'll take my $500,000 gain, put it right in my pocket, and go buy another house. And sorry, honey, we're moving to a new residence.
That's awesome. Yeah. So you just free money or tax-free money, I should say.
So a lot of options to get out there are definitely to help it. But again, you got to manage it. You got to have someone that can help you look at the periods of time, look at the gains that you have out there. We see it more in the stock industry. Mm-hmm. Again, they've got these financial planners that are helping people figure out when they should buy and sell their stocks from a tax side. We need to do the same thing with real estate. If you're a real estate investor, you really need to look at it and say, okay, what's the impact going to be? If I've got a low year, like we're talking about here, maybe we sell it December 31st, but hey, if next year, January, I'm going to have a bunch of excess income, I'm going to do some Roth conversions or some other things or get a bonus from work. I don't want that income there. I'm being lower tax rate or vice versa. Maybe this year I made a ton of money. We're going to wait till January 1st and then just roll that property on January 1st so that we can get the tax benefits, because it does add up. I mean, as you look at it, if you're talking 10, 20, 30% that you may not have to pay, that's a huge amount of money you'll have to put into your next project.
Yeah, it's tax planning, right? I mean, that's something that everybody should sit down and plan it out first versus just, let's shoot in the dark and hope we don't have to pay.
Yeah. And unfortunately, most people, again, I think they look at it and say, hey, I understand there's tax incentives there. I understand I can get depreciation. I understand that throughout the process that what my cash coming in may not be what I'm actually paying tax on, but they oftentimes don't look at the exit. What's the true picture on the exit? What am I going to, how do I do this to maximize my taxes? Can I even do a 1031 exchange? Not as popular as they used to be, especially in an environment where the government is talking about increasing capital gains rates at some point in the future. Now they've lost some steam on that because it was all part of Build Back Better. That's not going to happen now. But again, we don't see as much, but is that an option? Or again, if you're an age that you're going to pass away in the next 4 or 5 years, no need to sell and pay the tax. Let your family inherit that property and you get it tax-free when they inherit it. You get that step up in basis. So a lot of things you got to look at that people often, unfortunately, don't with real estate. And it's sad because, as you guys know, it's a big investment. We're not talking a $10,000 stock investment. We're talking usually hundreds, if not millions of dollars, hundreds of thousands, not millions of dollars invested in these properties.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let me ask this. So as far as, another one that you mentioned, like IRAs, and that's something I wanted to talk about too, was, I don't think everybody realizes, most people think IRA, they think that, you got to go with whatever is available, right?
Right.
Mutual funds, stocks, whatnot, but you can invest in real estate, with your IRA. Can you go through that a little bit and kind of explain that for, anybody that's listening, like this is what you kind of, the overview, how it works, what's possible. And
yeah, absolutely. So in order to invest in real estate and IRA, you've got to self-direct that. So that's not something you're not going to go down to the local brokerage house. Your financial advisor's not going to be setting this up for you. They're not getting paid off this transaction. So they don't really want anything to do with it. They want the stocks, bonds, mutual funds, all the things they're getting commissions off of. So they're not going to do that. You have to go through a trust company. Custodian is what they're referred to, but it's got to be a trust company that is set up to be a custodian for these type of transactions. Now, once you do, you can set up a self-directed IRA. And there's also self-directed 401ks. Understand that as well. If you got a business and you want to be able to put more money into the account, you can do it through a 401k, but you've got to get it set up correctly through the custodian. Make sure they're going to be accountable for the accounting of it, is basically what you're telling the government you're willing to do there. And then you can move money over, you can do conversions into it, or you can make contributions into there to be able to invest into anything you want, and real estate being one of those. And generally the most popular investment that most people do put in these self-directed IRAs.
Yeah. And so there's stipulations too, right? There's certain things that you can't be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the stipulations are such as like you can't be a father or a brother or a family a close linear family member. Is that the right
Yeah,
terminology?
so it's linear. So yeah, so brother, yes, he qualifies. You can invest. He's not disqualified, but anyone linear, you can't. So again, mom, dad, kids,
Right.
grandkids, anybody that's in that lineal line, you can't invest with. But anyone that's outside of there, you can. And again, there even are opportunities depending on how you structure it. You could invest with those others, but it would be like you're investing into a stock investment where they're putting part of it in. You're not borrowing money from them. They're putting in part of the investment. You're putting in part of the investment and co-investing, but you're not commingling funds.
Right. All right. So both of my brothers, if you're listening,
Yeah, send the money
yeah,
now.
yeah, I'll send you a PayPal link. No, don't do that.
But I will tell you too, though, Christopher, when we look at it, my recommendation, if you are going to use an IRA, now you've got to do some calculations on this. My recommendation is a Roth IRA because you got the tax-free growth, tax-free distribution. If you use a regular IRA, again, you've got to look at this. That yes, you're getting the tax deferral. Let's say you got a rental property, you're getting a tax deferral of all that rental income, which again may not be that much depending on depreciation. That if it were in your regular account, may not be making that big of an impact. But now when you sell that or start pulling the money out, all ordinary income, you're not getting that capital gain treatment anymore. So unfortunately, people often don't think through that process either. They think, I get rental deferral. Well, maybe I don't need rental deferral because of depreciation. And now all I've done is turn my asset into a very expensive taxable asset at some point that I'm going to pay more tax on than if I would have even just left that in my personal account, where the Roth, tax-free growth, tax-free distribution, you're not have to worry about tax at all. And the other problem, Christopher, that I'll tell you is if you look at the IRA, you pass away, there's no step up in basis. So if you got a bunch of real estate in an IRA and you pass away, your beneficiaries are stuck paying all that tax, where if it was in their own account or a Roth account, tax-free, they get the step up in basis, don't have to pay a dime. So again, people have got to be a little more careful than what I've seen across the country. And again, I think it's primarily promoters that are saying, where are people's assets at? They're in a traditional 401k account. I can get them to put it into a IRA account. Now they have money to invest in real estate, but it may come with some tax consequences.
Yeah. So let me ask this because this is a question I know we've heard just within our real estate club. We've talked about it and just kind of give it, if you can give an explanation on this, is that, someone who tries to use an IRA to fix and flip, that's, yeah, what does that look like versus it should be a long-term situation, right?
Yeah, so there's ways to do that, but unfortunately, you really have to do it through a C corporation, not through a LLC, which is typically the way they're structured. It's usually called a checkbook IRA, where you set up an LLC, you have control of the checkbook in these real estate environments where you're cutting the checks, doing those type of things. But if you look at it inside of there, that there are some major issues with that.
Mm.
Just problems that people are going to encounter.
Yeah. One of the most common things we've seen with IRAs is the note investing. Is people just buying, they buy a property and uh, or they'll fund it, the purchase, but they just make the money on the interest of the note. And that seems to be the most simplistic. Would you say that's one of the most simplistic ways of doing it, not trying to run the rental business out of it?
Yeah, it is, because if it ever becomes a trade or business, you're subject to UBTI, which is basically tax inside of that IRA at the trust level. So understand, again, you as a married couple, you can make $340,000 and still be in a 24% tax bracket. Saying, okay, I can make a lot of money. In a trust environment at about $12,000, you're already in a 37% bracket. So if you run the wrong business inside of there that doesn't qualify as a passive investment, which the IRA was set up to do, again, outside of a C corporation, all of a sudden you're subject to UBTI, you're paying tax at 37%, but then you still have to pay when you pull any money out. So you may be at 50, 60, 70% tax that you're paying. So you got to tell, again, people got to be very careful. You don't want to be flipping property in your IRA unless you make sure you've structured it correctly to where you're not going to have that UBTI issue.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And you also, the other one, sorry, I'm going to step in here. You also got to be careful. You can't get secured debt anyway. So again, you know that you can't put secured debt on a property in your IRA, meaning that, hey, I've got 100 grand, the property's 300. I'm going to go get a personal loan for 200 that's secured that I'm going to put onto this property. That doesn't work. Again, you can't attach it onto that property like we typically would with a regular mortgage. But if you can get someone even to give you a loan that does qualify, you're still subject there. You're subject to that same taxation on the debt portion of that loan. So again, we've got to be very careful. People, if you're going into an IRA with real estate, put the money in completely, or do as you're saying, let's go in as loans where we're just getting interest off of those.
Yeah, and that's actually one of our rental properties is somebody who we purchased it from, and they did a seller finance. They bought it.
We bought it.
Well, no, they bought
They
it.
bought it and then sold
He's
it
like,
to us.
we bought it. So, and they sold to us, and it was through the IRA. Misty's like, no, like, no, and they sold it to us through the IRA, and we make payments to the IRA, and so that individual is, and they're a CPA, by the way. We've never actually met them, but we paperwork. I looked him up. I'm like, oh, so he was his way of building a retirement. Is doing that and he makes the money on the interest, and that's it. It's not a huge interest payment, but we get the equity as the investors because the property went up, and we bought that actually in the middle of COVID.
Right.
And obviously things went up, but then he makes the interest money, every month as well until we decide to refinance it or whatnot. And he gets it all back after that. So
And that's one of the other things, Christopher, you got to look at as well. I mean, you got to look at the future of tax rates. Here you got this individual who's CPA thinks, hey, I did the right thing. But again, we've now got a capital gain asset that we could have got capital gain, long-term capital gains rates at, that we're now paying ordinary rates at. And what's the future of tax rates going to be? Most people think, hey, I'm going to get into retirement and I'm going to have less income, therefore my taxes go down. Mm-hmm. And they're correct. Most of us don't have the same gross income. So again, if we're making 100 grand or whatever that number is during our working years, and now we're in retirement and we're at 80,000, but you lost all the deductions. If you're like me, I've got 8 kids, 4 of them in college, 4 of them here at the house. I mean, if you have the right income levels, that's $20,000 to $30,000 a year. Yeah. You're getting in tax benefits. If you're maxing out a 401k at work over age 50, or $27,000 a year, you're not doing any of that in retirement. So gross income goes down, taxable income often goes up. So again, people often think, oh, I'll defer that tax, not realizing that they may be paying substantially more. And if taxes go up as they're slotted, that deferral may not be the best thing. So again, why we love the Roth side of it is you just take care of the tax up front, don't have to worry about it, and let that thing grow tax-free forever.
So is it worth for someone who gets to retirement age, or at least, because obviously there's a certain ages, right, with the IRA that you can start pulling it out. Is it worth just taking the money out and starting and once you've hit that age, you go ahead and take it out and just put it into a regular bank account? Or is it worth keeping it in there once you hit that age?
Generally, what we recommend that people do, and we do a lot of this, especially right now, taxes are going up January 1st, 2026, for sure. We know that they're going back to what they were in 2017. And so we're seeing a lot of people do conversions right now saying, look, taxes are not going to get lower than this. My belief is 2030 is the year we all have to look out for, because Medicare is going broke 2028. Social Security will go broke 2035. And it's my belief by 2030, the national debt will be at 60 trillion. If it's at 60 trillion, interest rates keep going up. The only money we have coming in will be enough to pay the debt. And yet we got to pay for these other programs that the government's going to obviously continue to run. So as we look at it, we've got some issues coming ahead of us that, we're seeing a lot of people saying, hey, we're converting into a tax-free environment right now, because we're not only realizing that our retirement income levels are going to be high enough, it's not going to help us. We're not going to be in lower bracket. And if rates go up, as many people are saying they have to, all we're doing is delaying a bill now that's going to cost us substantially more down the road.
Yeah. Yeah, I asked that question because I've had this my dad's older. I've had this conversation with him numerous times, and we invest together, and I'm like, Dad, you're past the age. Just take the money out and invest it. And he's like, I'm just going to leave it in. I'm like, but there's no point, right? I mean, at that point, there's no reason to, you can clearly see at age such and such, you can take your money out. Because there's
Yeah.
no point. I mean, there's no point in somebody, listening to this if they've reached that retirement age and they've passed it to keep putting money in the IRA, right? There's no need for that
Right.
anymore. It doesn't benefit them at that point.
No, and again, from a growth side too, take someone like your dad. We're talking about, his situation. He passes away with that IRA. Again, he's got to pay tax on whatever's in there, or you do, I guess, whoever inherits that, you and your brothers or whoever's in your family, you're going to get stuck with that tax, paying that tax. But if he gets the money out now, and let's say, just throwing numbers out there, let's say it's $1 million now,
Mhm.
but by the time he dies, it's going to be $2 million and he's invested into real estate. Well, he paid tax, on the million, but he got that other million tax free because it got, that gain got transferred over with no tax. So again, unfortunately, most people just don't analyze this enough. And again, you've got to look at second generation. It's not just your dad. Your dad may be saying, hey, I'm in the lowest tax bracket that I can be in. I don't want to pull a bunch of this money out and get into a little higher bracket, not realizing that I want my kids to get the most amount of money out of this, but I'm going to dump a big IRA on them. Maybe during the prime of their lives when they're making more money than they ever will, they add the IRA money on. Now it's getting taxed at twice of what I would have paid if I had just paid the tax and got out of the way. And my kids net would have got way more money net than what they're ending up with because of the way I structured this.
Yeah, man, that's gonna help. There's gonna be a lot of individuals that are gonna hear that, and that's gonna make a huge light
Ding,
bulb.
ding, ding.
Yeah, that's a ding, ding, ding. You're gonna get a lot of thank you cards on that one, Dave. Yeah, that's awesome. I want to ask about kind of like on the IRA too. That you know what someone who is passively investing. So, like for instance, the individual who is our who holds the IRA, holds the note to the property we own. He's only get taxed on the interest, right?
Right.
That's pretty much the way it works for him. So if he's what's that, like a $975 payment, Misty,
Mhm.
somewhere in there,
So
so
about 600 in interest.
600. So that's all he's getting taxed on, but he's being taxed on the passive side on a lower bracket, right?
Right.
That's the way that pretty much works. Can you kind of explain that a little bit, kind of how that works for somebody who's looking at they don't really want to do they want to be passive, but what would they be looking at if
They
they
don't
were to
want to have tenants, toilets,
yeah, they
and
don't want
trash.
tenants, toilets, or trash or any of that stuff. Like what do they need to watch out for or look for if they're going to be investing in a real estate passively through an IRA or just in general, just using notes?
I think if you look at it from a passive side, the biggest issue you have with passive activities is there are passive activity rules that if you end up with losses, you may not be able to currently take. So this is one we see, especially on big buildings. If someone's got a lot of money, they're going in, and again, IRA is not going to matter because it's tax deferred and you're not going to pay any consistent taxes. But take someone that maybe went out and bought $1 million office building, had a lot of money put in, went out and buy $1 million office building. You can do cost segregation, which means you can take all the stuff inside of there, the electrical, the carpet, the roof, all those things. Say, look, it's not going to last 39 years like the government tells us we need to depreciate this. We're going to do a cost segregation, bring that depreciation down to 7 years on maybe the carpet and 5 years on the electrical, and all the TIs were going to be at 5 to 10 years. So all of a sudden you got a bunch of depreciation, which could cause a big loss. And we see this happen many times. In fact, a lot of LLCs I've seen set up to where they have to maximize depreciation, which means they have to do cost segregation and try to maximize these dollars. Well, if you get a passive loss, that you're not going to be able to take that. That's going to get locked up until you have a passive gain. Or again, you've got to be in a situation, if you're in a rental property and your income is low enough, you can take up to $25,000, but anything above there, it's going to get locked. So we do see a lot of people that are a little misled, thinking, hey, I've got $200,000 of other income. I've got this loss on my real estate that's $200,000. I should be able to just match them up together and not pay any tax. Unfortunately, it's not going to work that way. They're going to have that loss get retained. Yes, they'll get to use it some point in the future, even if it's the day they sell it, they'll be able to use that. But I see that all the time too. People think it matches up better than unfortunately it often does.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. That makes perfect sense. That's killer. So the Roth IRA is the one to go with if you have one. That's the meat and potatoes. I heard someone say that they were probably going to get rid of those. Is that something that you know about, or they?
Yeah, so what they're looking at, they're actually expanding them now because they realize it's a revenue generator, that anybody that's got a Roth is paying their taxes up front, not deferring them. So they're actually expanding. What they're trying to do is get rid of them for the super wealthy. Yeah, you've got guys out there that the guy that started PayPal, I can't remember his name. He's got billions of dollars in here. You got guys like Mitt Romney's got a huge Roth account, and they're saying, look, this wasn't really the intent. We didn't mean for people to, again, PayPal starts out being worth nothing, and then all of a sudden you get billions of dollars of tax-free income. So they're trying to force them to start distributing out. Yeah. Saying, look, if yours is over $10 million, your Roth account, we're going to force you to start taking way more money out of that than we would. So it doesn't just keep growing tax-free. Yeah. And that's what they're trying to do. But for the average person, it's still available. And now one of the concerns many people have is saying, what happens if they come back and tax it in the future? But there's two sides that I would say I don't worry about it. Number one, the government on any of those situations, we look at permanent life insurance policies, 3 times they've changed the way they're structured. They always grandfathered in everyone who had the plan before. So if you get in, you're safe. And number two, there's only about 5% of the retirement assets in Roth, 95% in the tax deferred. So I'm the government and I'm saying, hey, I need to increase revenue and do it quickly. I'm going to that tax deferred account where I've made no promises to anyone what I'm going to charge you on the rates for your IRA. And I'm going to get out of there. I'll raise the rates on the 95%, not the 5 I already made a promise to that I'm going to have legal issues with and everything else. Let me just take it out the 95%. So again, I think there's we're seeing more and more reason, especially for people young like yourselves, to get into the Roth because we've got all this debt the government's got to pay for that's just compounding. And sooner or later, the only way we have to pay for it's higher taxes. There's no other way to do that.
Yeah, that's the way around it. Oh, man. So what would you recommend on somebody that, just like that's younger, self-employed, it's just pretty much jump straight into a Roth and start there and move?
Yeah. My recommendation, solo 401k, which again, you can't have employees. You can have you and your spouse. You can have you and partners. You can't have you and, Susie Q that's running the front desk. So if you got employees, you're not going to be able to do a solo 401k, but you can do solo self-directed 401ks, $20,500 contribution that can go in there from you. You can also have employers. I mean, you can get up to 50, I think it's actually $64,000 into those this year. So, I mean, again, large amounts you can get inside of there, which if you got the extra money, then builds up to where you can buy properties. Maybe initially you're just doing loans, but over time you're starting to buy actual assets inside of there, and all that's growing tax-free.
Yeah. So do you see any issues coming up front or up front? Any issues coming up or any challenges or anything that can affect, tax changes that are coming? Obviously, tax rates are going up, but anything that's, anyone that's listening, that's a real estate investor should be aware of, or?
Yeah. The biggest thing that they're talking about is increasing the long-term capital gains rate, getting it back up to ordinary tax. Now what's being discussed is anything over $1 million transaction. So you'd have many people that are getting into just residences, making 100, 200 grand here or there, $50,000 not going to affect. But for those large investors, obviously that's becoming very concerning because if you've got a building, big mall or something else, it could be worth, $100 million. All of a sudden you've got a $10 million profit on there that's now going to be taxed at 37 or 40 versus 20 to 24. Huge difference. So that's the biggest one people are keeping their eye on. There are some discussions that the step up in basis would go away with death, that people would no longer be able to get real estate with the step up in basis. But both of these have kind of fizzled. Again, they were part of Build Back Better that President Biden could never get enough support for. And with all the other economic issues that are going on right now, they've basically put it all on hold and said, look, we're not going to make any of these big changes until we can get inflation and some of these other things under control.
I saw a thing the other day that I guess it was up to 9.1% inflation.
Yeah.
And it just, was that yesterday, I think.
It was
all over Facebook that it went up like even more. And I know that we got quoted on a refinance for like 8%. And I emailed them back. I'm like, thanks for all of that for us to say no thank you. I guess.
And the sad thing is, when you look at it, is you've got rates that are going to go up another 1/4% or 3/4% this month, probably.
Man.
So again, what you're getting quoted next month's going to be a point higher or a point and a half higher. So I heard the other day too. I don't know, again, don't know the source of this, but that of those with mortgages, now many people are buying property cash. You had a lot of people that made a lot of money with the Bitcoin and the market over the last few years, so they're buying with cash. But of those with that had mortgages, they were going to put on 16% have backed out over the last month.
Mm.
That's a huge adjustment. And when we've got many of us financial professionals saying, look, we're going to go into a recession. The market's not, it's going to take another big dip. Bitcoin's going to have more and more issues. That means at some point the real estate's going to go down. I think one of the best things people can look at here is, again, making sure that they're not over leveraged if we end up with another 2008. But number two, maybe putting some money aside right now, looking for those opportunities as people are dropping out of the market because the rates are so high, using their cash to get some stills that are out there.
Yeah, no, that's fire. So you mentioned crypto. I've seen that is one I've watched. I mean, even, I'm in my 30s and I see these guys that go after. Misty claims I'm like in my 60s. She's like, you're not in your 30s. There's no way. But I never got into it. To me, it didn't make sense. It's such, I don't, you guys may agree with this, but I feel like if everybody's talking about it and it's hot, there's a good chance it's either going to go bust or there's a problem, right? It's what they're not talking about. And sure enough, there was a Voyager they filed for bankruptcy. And there was another one yesterday that I saw someone posted that filed for bankruptcy. Someone I know, they posted like, I lost 160,000 in Voyager. Now I don't know if they lost. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, but I mean, just to imagine, like, if they put an X amount and then it went up, opportunity cost, they lost. They didn't lose. They lost 160, but they had the opportunity cost of that was so large that they would have just sold. They would have took it, but they didn't put a whole lot in. But it's the whole it's the speculation part. And that's what real estate doesn't provide, right? I mean, you can speculate all day long in real estate and make a mistake, but for the most part, I mean, it's not like Voyager, or anything like that.
Right.
So, yeah, man, that's why I personally stay away from crypto, because I don't, the government's already started to get involved in that, haven't they? They've already started.
Yeah. Yeah, they're starting to regulate it more. I had the opportunity of buying it back when it was like $13. You can imagine. A client came to me. There was $1 million offering. He had 800 of it. He said, "Look, I'll put 800 in if you'll cover the other two." And I had the money at the time to do it, but again, I just couldn't get my head around it.
Yeah.
So I didn't, which is a good thing. We probably wouldn't be having this conversation now had I done that, because it'd be worth even at $20,000 a coin, it would be worth tens of, not hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah.
And I don't feel bad about it. Again, I don't feel bad because, again, I do see it. Even Puerto Rico is known as Crypto Island because so many of these guys made a fortune, moved over there trying to build a utopia. But again, it's volatile, and there's many top advisors still that are saying Bitcoin's going to drop down to $1,000 or $2,000 before, if it lasts, someone's going to last, but it's going to drop way down again before it really goes back up. Now, those who support Bitcoin are going to say that's foolish. There's no way it's going that far. But again, I don't want my assets at that much risk. I guess I look at it like gambling. If you got some extra money that you want to throw at Bitcoin or one of these exchanges and you're okay to lose it all, then fine, and take the risk and maybe you make a bunch. But we are going to see way more people lose money than made money as we get to the end of this.
I agree with that. It is like gambling. It is. It's fun money at that point. It's. I think what gets me is it's not a necessity. It will, maybe one day it'll turn to that. That's where the way of the world. But versus like rental properties, we got to have a place to live. And someone's got to have a mortgage. So someone needs to fund that mortgage, whether it's a bank or a personal investor, private money investor. All of those things are necessities of life, but we don't necessarily need 800 different types of crypto at this point, and so that's exactly why it's volatile. It's going to be.
And I think one of the things I would tell you too, from a real estate standpoint, number one, if you look at it as a hedge against inflation, many people have always said that you've got gold, and gold especially. good hedge. Bitcoin should be a good hedge, and real estate. Well, the only one that's really proven to be a good hedge against inflation is real estate. And as we look at it too, even if the market drops, so let's say you got a property, the market drops again. 2008, we had people just panic and get out. Again, if you're in a situation where you're getting the rental income you need to cover everything, real estate's going to come back. Again, even if it drops for a period of time, over time, that's like the market. Sooner or later, it's going to come back. Unlike some of these exchanges, they're not going to be there. I mean, again, you look at many coins that have been out there, people have invested in, they've already tanked and are gone, and whatever money was put into them is never coming back.
Yeah, it just disappears. It's like a ninja trick. They drop smoke on you. Done. Man. Any man, before we bow out here, any advice that you'd like to give anybody that's kind of wanting to get involved, or retirement advice, real estate advice, or kind of top of mind that you think would be great advice to hand out?
Yeah, the biggest thing I tell people is do your homework. Again, when we look at it, so many things, we're building an environment where we get hyped up, we want to do things. That's a good thing, not a bad thing in many situations. But again, if you haven't owned any asset, I'm talking real estate, if you're buying annuity, life insurance, anything that we would talk about, say, hey, if you haven't owned it for 40 years before, you don't have to buy it within the next 12 hours. Now, yes, maybe there's a deal that came up that you do have to move quickly on, but for most people, take a little bit of time and make sure you just understand what you're doing. Get an education, from people like yourselves. Say, hey, spend a few hours with us. Let us help you understand how it works, what you're doing, where you're getting into, the pitfalls, the benefits. Make sure you do that, because as we all know, once you signed on the dotted line, that's really when the work and again, either the benefits or the problems begin. I mean, most people make the real estate on the purchase, not on the sell. So we want people to make sure they're doing their homework, and people like you are there to help them do that homework, to make sure they're getting the education they need. And obviously you're part of different groups that talk about these topics. But that's what you need to do, is to make sure you understand it. Again, track it for a while. I mean, I look back at the successful guys that I've had in gambling. If you look at the guys that, again, bet on baseball and make millions and millions of dollars, they all set models out before they put in large amounts of money to make sure that it was going to work correctly. Yeah. So, okay, make sure, hey, I understand it. I'm in an environment that this model is going to work. And I would say that for real estate people as well, is just, again, be smart about what you're doing and make sure you understand it, and stay connected with people like yourselves that are experts that can help you through the process.
Man, fire. So you have a podcast. I definitely want to make sure that we I know that you have a podcast. If you want to kind of talk about that and share with the audience, where they can go and listen to you and give some more fire advice.
Yeah, absolutely. So our podcast is the Retirement Risk Show. It is all based upon eliminating the risk in your retirement. And I'm a retirement risk advisor. That's what I do at this point, help you get through that long self-imposed period of unemployment. But you're going to have a lot of challenges. You're going to have issues such as, when do you claim your Social Security? And what tax are you going to have to pay on it? And can I get it tax-free and claim later and get more money? What do I do with Medicare? What happens if I have a long-term care event? What if these taxes do double? My job is to help look and analyze those things. So hopefully you can get safely through it. Again, it includes, you got real estate. Hey, let's make sure it's structured properly so we can address tax issues and these other things. But our job is to really help you better understand what your retirement's going to look like so that you can navigate it now. I always tell people, I was raised in a family with 6 children. I've got 8 kids. My family I grew up in, there were 6 of us plus my parents, and my mom cooked almost every meal. If you can imagine, we were poor, but that didn't mean my mom didn't have some strong values. And so as a result, we raised most of our food. We had farm animals. She cooked most of our meals. Well, people loved to come to our house and eat. Well, if they came before all of us sat down to eat, pretty easy to throw, an 8th or a 9th plate on the table. You had, again, my parents and us 6 kids, easy to put a 9th plate on the table. We'd all take our portions and feed them. You show up after we've all eaten, especially with 3 teenage boys, it's a high probability you're not going to get the best part of that meal. Yep. Yeah, there may be something left. My mom will always make sure you're fed, but it's the same thing when we look out to retirement. We can take care of things today. Same with real estate. Take care of it today. You don't want to be at the back end and then trying to figure out what mistakes you made, what problems you had, and not really looked at what you should have been doing.
Too many people show up to the table late. Absolutely.
Yep. Good analogy.
Man, yeah, that analogy was fast. That explains it. It's the way you explain that was beautiful, because that's something that I'm an oddity, man. I think I was like 19. I was 17 wanting to learn about how to retire early. That was my big deal, you know. And that
Yeah.
was like my sole mission. I got to be at 35 years old. I got to be able to just pack it up. And we did it, but it was like, the ability, not do it, but the ability to say, I want to be done. And I love the way you put that. That's absolutely fire to say you sat down at the table too late. You make
Yep.
me think of me because I'm like I would be the teenager like, oh, I ate all the food, sorry. So do you still work with I got to ask, just for anybody that's listening, are you working specifically with CPAs or do you work with any other clients out there as well? Kind of give an
Yeah,
idea of that.
so personally, I work with CPAs only. And again, most of what I do is education at this point because I'm just so busy with creating content, research, making sure I get people educated on the topics. But our team inside of our office and our organization, we have people that will work with anyone that needs help. So all they got to do, Retirement Risk Advisors, our website, you'll get access to all the information we have. Again, very highly promoted to CPAs, but any of our education, you're welcome to participate in, even if you aren't a CPA. And I'll tell you, it's great info. Just our model allows us to be able to focus on those people that hopefully are advising you to get them educated, so they're giving better advice out there. But we will work with anyone. Happy to do what we can to help.
Man, well, that's fire, Dave. I greatly appreciate you coming on. Very just I mean, awesome, awesome, awesome knowledge. That I know there's a lot of individuals that can listen to this and can benefit from it. I hope that the younger individuals listening to this will take note of everything too, because that's a huge all the 20-year-olds that may listen to this to go, oh, need to pay attention to that. So thank you for
Yeah.
for coming on. Man, I'd love to have you back on another day. We could talk more on some other items too. Man, thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Glad to be here. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Thank you guys, and that's the show, and we will catch you guys next time.